you know I'm addicted to you. And it's twisted, you've been gifted with the evil.
Jungkook is the CEO of one of the largest advertising companies in Korea. As the only child, he is the heir to his parents' business dynasty. Currently, Jungkook is in need of a new secretary because his previous one just resigned due to family matters, a common excuse that annoyed him, as his former secretary was one of his trusted people. Coincidentally, the company has been recruiting new employees for the CEO secretary position for a few days, and Jungkook has entrusted the HR department to screen the candidates before they meet with him for the final interview. Today, Jungkook will meet the candidate for his new secretary, carefully selected by his trusted HR team. "Sir, this is your new secretary candidate," said Lee, the HR manager, after escorting the candidate into Jungkook's office. Jungkook stared sharply at the woman who was to be his new secretary. Anger and resentment were visible in his eyes. "Is it her?" Jungkook asked again for confirmation. Lee nodded with a smile, feeling confident that he had chosen the best candidate. "Yes, sir. Initially, I considered a male candidate like your previous secretary, but given the sudden vacancy and your urgent need, I chose her," Lee explained as he approached Jungkook's new secretary candidate. "Sir, her name is Park. I already know who she is. No need for introductions." Jungkook cut off Lee's sentence abruptly. The woman who was about to become the CEO's secretary, Park Yin, rolled her eyes, frustrated by Jungkook's lack of professionalism. "You already know her." Lee looked surprised. "In that case, I'll leave the final selection to you, sir," he said nervously, sensing his boss's ominous aura. "Fine, you can go now," Jungkook said coldly to Lee. As soon as Lee left, Yin was about to leave too. She was sick of seeing the man who, unfortunately, happened to be her ex. "Where do you think you're going?" Jungkook asked sharply. Yin turned around. "None of your business," she replied, then continued walking toward the door. "You can't just leave like that. Once you're in this office, don't act recklessly." Hearing this, Yin felt provoked. She turned back, facing him. Raising her hand, she pointed at his face. "Hey, you. Look in the mirror." Jungkook smirked. "Okay, from now on, you will work in this company." Yin rolled her eyes. "Sorry, I'm no longer interested after finding out you're the boss." Jungkook chuckled mockingly. "As expected, you can't stay professional." Yin grew even angrier. "Shouldn't you be the one looking in the mirror?" Jungkook stared at her calmly, a faint smirk forming on his lips. "I'm already being professional. I accepted you because Lee said you were the best candidate. Where's my lack of professionalism? Aren't you the one trying to leave this room after finding out I'm your boss?" Jungkook asked confidently. "I applied here because I knew you weren't the CEO. But why are you now?" "Because I took over this company 2 months ago," Jungkook replied shortly. For a moment, Yin was silent, but she wasn't surprised. However, Jungkook's next words hit her harder. "From now on, you're officially my secretary. I chose you because you applied to this company. If you reject the job just because I'm your ex, it shows how unprofessional you really are," Jungkook said, smiling mockingly. Sure enough, Yin was swayed. "Okay, I'll take the job. We'll see who can't stay professional here. I don't plan on mixing the past with my work now." Jungkook's smirk widened. Internally, he celebrated his victory. Meanwhile, Yin stood there, glaring at him. "All right, you can start working tomorrow," Jungkook said calmly. "Thank you, Mr. Jeon," Yin replied, emphasizing his title to show just how professional she could be. "Now, if you'll excuse me." Without waiting for Jungkook's response, Yin left the office. From his chair, Jungkook watched Yin until she disappeared behind the door. He stared at the door for a few more seconds, then let out a quiet sigh. Yin had just stepped out of the elevator, her legs feeling weak and her heart racing. Facing her ex after 4 months apart was far beyond her expectations for the day. Before leaving the building, she decided to sit down for a moment in the lobby area. It felt as if all her energy had suddenly been drained. The effect of seeing her ex again was stronger than she had imagined. Suddenly, her phone rang, a call from the hospital. Yin quickly answered. "Yes? Yes, it's me." "All right. I will pay all the medical bills for my little sister next month. I just got a job today, so I can guarantee the payment next month." "Yes, no problem. Please hold on to the guarantee letter. Thank you for your patience with me." The call ended, and Yin breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, her decision to work here seemed to be the right one. Starting tomorrow, she would see her ex every day. Although she felt anxious, all she had to do was remain as professional as possible. That was it. Finally, with her heart a little more at ease, Yin stood up from the sofa and left the company building, the place that would officially become her workplace tomorrow, with a salary she considered quite decent for the CEO's secretary. The next day, "Did you make this?" Jungkook stared at the cup of coffee in disbelief. He distinctly remembered that Yin could never make coffee this perfect back when they were dating. Also, the taste was quite familiar. He suspected this was made by one of the office boys here. Yeah. Are you afraid I poisoned it? Yin asked with a smirk. I'm not looking to go to jail at a young age, sir. So don't worry. I didn't poison you. Jungkook scoffed. I'll ask again. Did you make this coffee? Of course I did. Who else? Yin responded, this time a bit irritated. Jungkook narrowed his eyes. Liar. Believe whatever you want, Yin retorted, turning her gaze away and avoiding eye contact with her boss. Jungkook chuckled softly, smirking as he took another sip of the coffee. Still the same. Always lying, he said, emphasizing the word lying. Such a liar, he added, subtly bringing up their past. Yin, now drawn into the conversation, continued discussing their history. You were the one who never believed in me. Jungkook scoffed again. A liar is always a liar. Yin gave a bitter smile. Right, you're never wrong, are you? It's always me who's in the wrong, isn't it? Jungkook fell silent, looking at her as her eyes turned red, fighting back tears. I've always been the one to give in to you. Jungkook clenched his fists tightly under the table. But not anymore. We don't have any relationship now, so I won't be controlled or guilt-tripped anymore when it was you. Yin pointed directly at his face, who was far more at fault. Jungkook didn't respond. His mind drifted back to their past, where Yin often gave in to his demands while he grew possessive, accusing her of things until their relationship finally reached its breaking point that night. Yin smiled bitterly, wiped her tears, and spoke again. Let's forget it. Let's pretend we never knew each other in the past, and keep it that way moving forward. We're just business acquaintances now, and after that, we're strangers. Jungkook subtly shook his head, disagreeing, but his thoughts returned to that night, memories that continued to haunt him, filling him with pain. If there's nothing else important, I'll excuse myself, sir, Yin finally said before walking out and heading back to her workspace. Jungkook remained, his fists still clenched tightly. The image of that man tormented him again, making him feel like he wanted to destroy him. But more than that, he was deeply disappointed in Yin, who at the time had still been his girlfriend. He was angry, furious. Jungkook no longer touched his coffee. His appetite for it was gone. The cup sat abandoned on the desk, untouched. The coffee was actually made by one of the office boys. Yin had asked for help in making it when she was in the office pantry earlier. Jungkook and Yin had just finished a meeting with several CEOs from other companies in one of the hotel's meeting rooms. Most of the meeting discussions revolved around potential collaborations between the companies. The clock showed 3 p.m. too early for dinner, so after the meeting, everyone planned to head home. However, just as Jungkook and Yin reached the hotel lobby and were about to leave suddenly, Mr. Jungkook, Mona called out, halting Jungkook and Yin in their tracks. With an exasperated sigh, Jungkook finally turned around, already recognizing the voice that called out to him. To be honest, he wished he could avoid this woman who had been relentlessly pursuing him for the past month. Despite Jungkook's repeated firm rejections, she shamelessly continued. Unfortunately, Mona was the daughter of one of the CEOs whose father had previously signed a business contract with Jungkook's company. As a result, they occasionally had to meet, especially since Mona's aging father had begun sending her as his representative at CEO meetings like the one today. Yes, Jungkook responded, his tone as cold as usual. Mr. Jungkook, I'm inviting you to have dinner with me. How about it? Please, just this once? Mona pleaded. Jungkook immediately shook his head. Sorry, I'm busy. Besides, I already had lunch earlier, and it's not even time for dinner yet. But Mona didn't give up. Please, just this once. After that, I promise I won't bother you again. Jungkook was truly fed up with this woman. However, when his eyes accidentally met Yin's gaze, who had been quietly observing their interaction, a subtle smirk formed on his lips. Alright then, let's go to the restaurant here in the hotel, Jungkook offered. Mona shook her head. I don't like it here. The food isn't good. How about we go to XD restaurant instead? She suggested eagerly, mentioning a high-end restaurant in Seoul. Jungkook nodded and forced a small smile. Alright then. But before Jungkook could take another step, Mona called out again. Mr. Jungkook, could I ride with you? My secretary isn't with me today, and my driver had to rush back to the office because my father needed him unexpectedly. She was lying. Her personal driver had been waiting in the parking lot the entire time. But Mona didn't care. She was trying to seize this opportunity to be close to Jungkook. Later, she could simply text her driver and tell him to head back to the office without her. Right now, all that mattered was being with Jungkook. Without thinking twice, Jungkook nodded, and Mona was thrilled. She eagerly walked out alongside Jungkook, while Yin followed behind them. She deliberately kept her distance from Mona, unsure why the woman made her feel so uncomfortable. So, Yin decided to maintain some space between them. As they were about to get into the car, Jungkook prepared to take the driver's seat. In the past, whenever the meetings were within the city, his secretary would also serve as his driver. But ever since Yin became his secretary, Jungkook had returned to driving himself, and Yin would usually sit beside him. Normally, Jungkook wouldn't allow her to sit in the back, reasoning that he didn't want to appear like a chauffeur driving her around. So, Yin always sat in the front passenger seat. However, since Mona was present this time, Yin took the initiative to sit in the back and politely offered the front seat to Mona. Soon after, the car headed towards the restaurant Mona had mentioned earlier. During the ride, Mona made several attempts to engage Jungkook in conversation, although he showed little interest. She did this intentionally, occasionally glancing at Yin. Mona wondered why Jungkook's new secretary was so beautiful. Truth be told, she felt a pang of jealousy and discomfort having Yin in between her and Jungkook. Mr. Jungkook, I remember you used to have a very competent male secretary. Is he no longer working with you? Mona asked, curiosity getting the best of her. He resigned for personal reasons, Jungkook replied shortly. Mona glanced at Yin and then continued, I've had several secretaries over the years, and I prefer male secretaries. They usually perform better than female secretaries, she remarked with a slightly smug tone. And often, there are scandals between male bosses and their female secretaries. That's what many of my friends have experienced, Mona added, clearly trying to stir things up. Upon hearing Mona's comment, Yin clenched her teeth, struggling to contain her anger. But she couldn't hold back any longer and finally responded, Excuse me, miss, if you're implying something about me, let me make it clear that my relationship with Mr. Jungkook is purely professional, strictly between a boss and his secretary. Hearing this, Mona's eyes lit up. Oh, that's great to hear. To be honest, I also prefer male secretaries. I find it more comfortable to work with them. In fact, I've never had a female secretary before, Jungkook chimed in. Then why did you choose her? Mona asked, genuinely curious. I have my reasons, and I don't think I'm obligated to answer all of your questions, Jungkook responded coldly, effectively silencing Mona. Quietly, after 15 minutes of driving, even though Mona had shifted the conversation to a lighter topic, Yin secretly watched the two of them with a sorrowful gaze. With the casual conversation from Mona, they now seemed more familiar with each other. For some reason, seeing that made her chest ache. In the past, Jungkook used to behave that way only with her, but now it seemed he could act that way with other women too. Yin sighed, her chest tightening painfully. While she could suppress her feelings of love, the jealousy was almost impossible to contain. Unbeknownst to her, Jungkook had already caught her watching him and Mona through the rearview mirror. Now the three of them had arrived at the intended restaurant and had already ordered their meals. From the beginning, Yin had taken the initiative to sit apart from Jungkook and Mona, because honestly, she felt uncomfortable watching the closeness between them, and to make it worse, Jungkook didn't make any effort to stop her. So, Yin ended up sitting alone at a table near where Jungkook and Mona were seated. She ate quietly, trying to tune out the sound of Mona's whining attempts to grab Jungkook's attention, even though Jungkook himself didn't respond much. Secretly, Jungkook looked at Yin with a somber expression for about 5 seconds. Seeing her eating alone made him uncomfortable. He hadn't meant to isolate her from the beginning, but Yin herself had insisted on sitting apart. Mr. Jungkook, have you ever loved someone? Mona suddenly asked in the middle of their meal. The question naturally caught Jungkook's attention, as well as Yin's, who could still clearly hear their conversation. Jungkook gave a bitter smile, bowed his head briefly, then looked at Mona. Yes, I have. I loved her very much, but something happened, so we... Jungkook paused, glancing at Yin for a moment. She didn't react. She just stared straight ahead. So, we broke up. Mona put on an expression as if she sympathized, though inside she was thrilled to hear that Jungkook had broken up with someone, whoever that woman was. Are you okay, Mr. Jungkook? Mona asked, feigning sympathy. If Jungkook fell into her trap, she would unleash her true intentions. Jungkook gave a faint smile. I'm fine. The rest of the sentence continued only in his heart. Because she's here now, she's with me, so, I'm fine. So, are you ready to open your heart to someone else now, Mr. Jungkook? Mona asked, this time her tone full of hope. Yes, of course, I'm ready to open my heart to someone else and forget about her, Jungkook answered casually. Hearing his response, Mona's eyes sparkled, and her face lit up with joy, but that contrasted sharply with Yin's expression. For a split second, Jungkook's gaze shifted to Yin, and he held his breath. His chest tightened, seeing Yin now holding back tears from falling. Taking a deep breath, Yin struggled to keep herself from crying right there. Finally, she got up and walked straight to the restroom inside the restaurant. Damn, why did she have to seem so pathetic right now? Seeing Yin leave, Jungkook lowered his head, staring dejectedly at his food. His eyes began to sting, his heart heavy with guilt for making her jealous. Meanwhile, Mona didn't care at all about Yin's departure and continued enjoying her meal, completely oblivious to the tension that had just unfolded. Yin cried in the women's restroom, covering her mouth tightly with her hand to stifle her sobs. After a few minutes of letting her emotions out, she whispered to herself, "He's so cruel." Wiping away her tears, she took a deep breath before washing her face. She wanted to leave and not go back, but unfortunately, her purse was still on the table. After some time calming herself down, she finally stepped out of the restroom, knowing she couldn't stay away too long. She didn't want her boss waiting for her, especially if he had already finished eating by now. Slowly, Yin opened the restroom door and stepped out, only to freeze in place. Her body tensed as someone pulled her into a warm embrace. Yin knew exactly who it was, Jungkook. She struggled, hitting his chest, trying to free herself. "Let me go. You're cruel. I hate you," Yin shouted, covering her face as she cried again. Jungkook loosened his grip slightly, his arms moving from around her back to her waist, watching her as she sobbed into her hands. "You still love me, Yin," Jungkook said softly, his eyes never leaving her face. Yin lowered her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jungkook reached out to wipe them away with his thumbs, but Yin pushed him off. "Don't touch me. Who said I still?" Jungkook suddenly silenced her lips with his own, kissing her, not allowing Yin to speak any further. His lips pressed firmly and moved somewhat harshly. His ears burned upon hearing Yin say that she no longer loved him. But from everything that had happened today, it was clear that Yin still loved him deeply. Yes, Jungkook was certain of it. In truth, he still loved her too, and no one could ever replace her, no matter what. After a few moments, Jungkook finally pulled away from the one-sided kiss. "Don't lie to yourself anymore. I know you still love me," he said firmly, looking directly into Yin's eyes. Yin stared at Jungkook in disbelief, and with a heavy sigh, retorted, "Why would I still love you? You're selfish and possessive, and you don't care about my feelings." With that, Yin stormed off, leaving Jungkook standing there alone. Her goal now was to return to the restaurant, grab her purse, and leave by herself, probably taking a taxi. Upon returning to the restaurant, Mona stirred up even more tension. Seeing Yin walking toward her table without Jungkook, Mona sneered, "Where's Jungkook?" Yin didn't answer, opting for silence. She inwardly scoffed at how Mona kept calling Jungkook's name as if she were extremely close to him. Mona clicked her tongue. "You do have a mouth, don't you?" Again, Yin remained silent. "You're so rude. You don't deserve to be Jungkook's secretary," Mona screamed, drawing the attention of everyone in the restaurant. But instead of Mona's outburst prompting Yin to respond or apologize, Yin stayed silent. Without Jungkook here, there was no reason to engage. After all, Jungkook was her boss, not Mona. Besides, Yin had already decided she would quit working for Jungkook. Growing more frustrated at Yin's lack of response, Mona stood up, raising her hand as if to slap her. But before she could, a strong hand stopped her. "If you so much as lay a finger on her with your dirty hands, don't expect to walk away unscathed," Jungkook growled, his face filled with barely controlled anger. Both Yin and Mona were equally shocked, especially Mona, who was stunned by his coldness. "Mr. Jungkook, who is this woman really? Isn't she just your secretary?" Mona asked, bewildered. A smirk formed on his lips. "You want to know who she is? She's the only woman who will ever be my wife, so from now on, don't ever bother me again. Do you even realize how sick I am of your behavior?" Mona's eyes widened. She hadn't expected Jungkook to be this blunt. The tension was then interrupted by Yin's voice. "Sorry, miss. There seems to be some misunderstanding. Mr. Jungkook must be speaking nonsense. Sometimes he tends to act drunk, even when he hasn't been drinking. I'm not his fiancé." Yin paused for a moment, her eyes suddenly catching sight of a man who had just entered the restaurant alone. Without hesitation, Yin quickly walked over to him, linking her arm to his. "This man is my real fiancé." Jungkook clenched his fists, his jaw tightening as his teeth ground together in fury. Unable to bear the sight of Yin clinging to the stranger any longer, Jungkook strode over and forcibly pulled her away from the man. The confused man, now left standing alone, scratched his head in bewilderment. "Huh? Who just said I was getting married? What just happened?" he muttered, staring after Jungkook and Yin as they walked away. Yes, Jungkook pulled Yin out of the restaurant, leaving the confused stranger behind, and Mona, who clenched both her fists tightly. She let out a frustrated sigh, coming to terms with the new revelation that Jungkook was, in fact, in love with his own secretary. She had suspected it earlier, especially after noticing how Jungkook had repeatedly gazed at his secretary with a different kind of look. However, she didn't want to jump to conclusions before learning the truth. And now, it turned out her suspicions were correct. Yin was not just an ordinary secretary. Upon arriving at his apartment, Jungkook immediately placed Yin into the bathtub in his bathroom. He turned on the shower with warm water, then grabbed the shower head and started rinsing Yin's body, erasing the remnants of her contact with the stranger. He couldn't stand the thought of another man touching her. Yin began to sob, realizing this scene was repeating again. Jungkook was being too much, far too overbearing. "I hate it when you get close to other men, Yin. Why don't you understand?" Jungkook yelled. "How dare you touch that stranger right in front of me, huh?" Jungkook was utterly furious, throwing the shower head to the floor so hard that it shattered. After that, he stormed out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. Yin continued to cry, sitting in the bathtub, hugging herself tightly. Jungkook was being irrational, and that's why Yin had asked to break up and leave him in the first place. Yin knew that Jungkook cared about her, but not like this. Sometimes his obsessive behavior scared her. Jungkook's breath was heavy, his blood boiled, and he felt like punching that stranger, eliminating him from the face of the earth if necessary. Yin was both his weakness and his source of strength. He couldn't bear seeing her near any man except himself. He was deeply temperamental, driven by his possessiveness over her, and he often lost control. Closing his eyes, Jungkook tilted his head upward, hands on his hips, trying to rein in his emotions. A moment later, he glanced at the bathroom door inside his bedroom. His rational mind suddenly returned, and Jungkook, worried, quickly opened the bathroom door. "Yin." Jungkook rushed toward Yin, enveloping her in a hug. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He held her body, which was still fully clothed and now entirely submerged in the warm water inside the bathtub. Yin's sobs grew louder. She couldn't find the words to speak. Jungkook only tightened his embrace. They both remained silent, except for Yin's quiet sobs. After several minutes passed, Yin finally spoke through her tears. "You're cruel. You don't trust me," Yin whispered between her soft sobs. Jungkook released his embrace and stared at her intently. "Do you know why I was angry with you that day?" Yin looked at him, her small cries still audible. "I was angry because you didn't listen to me. You promised me you wouldn't meet your ex-boyfriend anymore. But what did I see? You two kissing inside your apartment?" "No, I told you. We weren't kissing. He kissed me. I tried to avoid him, but I don't care. I told you never to meet him again, never to open the door for him, but you still did, and that's why it happened." Jungkook's voice was rising again. Yin sobbed harder. "He stood outside my apartment for hours, and when I checked the intercom, he looked like he was about to pass out. That's why I opened the door. I didn't know he was pretending. And when I let him in, he kissed you because you opened the door. You let him in, thinking he was going to faint. You were fooled, and the moment you let him in, he kissed you in your apartment. You tried to resist, but he's stronger. Do you know what could have happened to you if I hadn't shown up in time? He could have done much worse, Yin. Do you know what made me the angriest? If he kissed you outside, I would understand. It means he forced himself on you. But what happened is that you let him into your apartment. You invited him in, saying he was about to faint. You should have left him there. Let him faint. Let him die. Your crazy ex will never stop unless you firmly reject him. You told me you'd never give him another chance. But what happened? You lied. You let him get close to you again. Do I need to hire someone to get rid of him? That way, he won't bother you anymore." Yin quickly shook her head. "No, please don't do that. Don't." Jungkook's anger flared at seeing Yin still care about her ex. "So you still care about him, huh?" Yin immediately grabbed onto Jungkook's arm, her sobs growing louder. "No, I don't want you going to jail for killing him. Better I go to jail than let him live," Jungkook shouted. "I still love you, Jungkook. I don't want you to go to jail. I don't want you to leave me again." Her tears flowed uncontrollably as she screamed those words, and they finally cooled the fire in Jungkook's heart. He looked at her, still crying, and in one swift motion, he pulled her neck towards him and kissed her roughly. Yin was startled, but this time, she didn't resist. Despite the tears streaming down her face, she kissed him back. Her eyes closed as she felt the rush of his emotions. Anger, disappointment, sadness, and most of all, his deep love for her. Guilt began to fill her heart. She felt remorse for breaking her promise to him and for falling into her ex's trap. If only she hadn't opened the door that night, this situation would never have happened, and her relationship with Jungkook would still be intact. After a few minutes of a long kiss where they exchanged emotions that were easier felt than spoken, they finally pulled apart. They stared deeply into each other's eyes, immersed in the mix of feelings now swirling between them. I only sat down to eat with another woman, and you were already in tears. Can you imagine how I felt when I saw your ex kissing you right in front of me? Jungkook asked, his voice low yet still intimidating. All this time, you've always been so comfortable, never worried or jealous. You had no idea how I felt that night, did you? Jungkook continued, his tone calm but filled with intensity. I'm sorry, Yin whispered softly. I'm sorry, I know I was wrong. I wasn't firm enough with him, and that's why he was able to fool me. Yin spoke gently, taking Jungkook's hand in hers. Are you afraid of me? Jungkook asked, his tone calmer now. No, after thinking about it, I realize you're like this because I wasn't firm with myself, Yin admitted, lowering her gaze. But after a moment, she lifted her head and looked at him. From now on, I won't let him get near me again. Jungkook gazed at her tenderly, a faint smile appearing on his lips. He leaned in and kissed her again. Although Yin knew Jungkook was still angry, she could feel the pent-up emotions through his kiss. Without realizing it, Jungkook stood up, removing his suit and the rest of his clothes, now soaked from the warm water in the bathtub. Her cheeks flushed, knowing exactly what Jungkook intended to do next. A few minutes later, Yin finally gave in as Jungkook's actions became a little rough. Can't you be gentler, honey? Yin asked between gasps. No, this is your punishment, Jungkook replied, his voice hoarse, not pausing. Baby, let's get married next week, Jungkook said, his breath ragged and heavy. Yin raised her eyebrows, trying to process the sudden proposal while dealing with the sensations she was feeling. Married? Are you serious? Yin asked, struggling to focus on speaking. Yes, I'm serious. We'll start arranging everything tomorrow, Jungkook responded, not stopping for a second. Alright then. Besides, if I marry you, that jerk won't dare come near me again. 2 hours later, Yin lay under the blanket, beside Jungkook who was sound asleep, his face looking peaceful as he possessively held her. Though it was still early in the evening, they were both utterly exhausted. Yin smiled, reminiscing about what had just happened. Back when they were together, they used to do this at least twice a month. Her smile widened as she looked at a wall in Jungkook's bedroom, where a photo of her smiling was still hanging. Her eyes then moved to the nightstand, where another framed picture of her was beautifully displayed. The bedroom hadn't changed at all. Her photos were still in their usual places. Yin glanced at Jungkook's face, which seemed to be caught in a pleasant dream as a faint smile lingered on his lips. She moved closer and gently kissed his lips. Keep smiling, honey. I'm sorry for disappointing you, and thank you for never stopping loving me. She remembered what Jungkook had said earlier about her always feeling safe and never being jealous of him. It wasn't until today that she understood how awful jealousy felt. Just seeing Jungkook sitting and eating with another woman had been enough to shatter her heart. But how must Jungkook have felt when he saw her ex kissing her right in front of him? Yin sighed softly and hugged Jungkook tightly, causing him to stir slightly in his sleep. What is it, baby? Jungkook asked, his voice husky with sleep. Nothing. I just feel like hugging you. Let me hold you as much as I want, she replied gently. Jungkook gave a small smile and let her do as she pleased, drifting back to sleep while Yin held him close. 3 days later. The doorbell in Yin's apartment kept ringing, waking her up from her sleep. Feeling annoyed, she glanced at the clock on the wall, which showed it was 11 p.m. She grumbled, wondering who would visit at such a late hour. Groggily, she walked towards the main door and looked at the intercom screen. Her eyes widened in shock. There, she saw her ex, Jungkook, standing in front of her door, grinning eerily. It was terrifying, and that was all Yin could think at that moment. She immediately tried to contact the building security, but just like the last time, there was no response. This made Yin even more certain that something was wrong. Her suspicions grew stronger. Perhaps Jungkook had managed to bribe the security guards in the building to work with him. If her suspicions were correct, then staying in this building was no longer safe. The doorbell kept ringing. Her ex was truly frightening. With trembling hands, Yin grabbed her phone and immediately dialed Jungkook's number. Yin sat on the sofa, trying to calm down and ease her fear. She waited anxiously for Jungkook to answer the call, and after a few seconds, "Yes, baby?" Hearing his voice, Yin quickly spoke in a rushed tone, "Jungkook, help me. That jerk is outside again." "What? I'll be there right away," Jungkook said. The call ended, but Yin felt relieved this time because she knew Jungkook would come. However, she also felt a bit worried. What would happen next? Whatever it was, Yin hoped nothing bad would occur. 30 minutes passed. Suddenly, Yin heard a commotion outside her apartment door. She quickly checked the intercom screen and was shocked to see Jungkook, who had arrived and was now furiously beating Yugyeom. But something frightened Yin even more. On the screen, she saw Jungkook pull out a folding knife from his pocket. She was truly shocked, and without realizing it, she covered her mouth. A few moments earlier, Jungkook had just arrived. From the end of the hallway, he could already see Yugyeom standing right in front of Yin's unit. Jungkook walked closer, and without waiting, he punched Yugyeom in the face, knocking him backward. Yugyeom recognized Jungkook, the man who had replaced him in Yin's heart. Yugyeom sneered, "You don't need to interfere. I want to see Yin, not you," he said with a mocking grin. Jungkook rolled his eyes and at that moment, pulled out a folding knife from his pocket. His eyes glared sharply at him, and he smirked. "Of course it's my business. Yin belongs to me." Without further words, Jungkook swiftly approached Yugyeom, grazing his cheek as Yugyeom narrowly dodged. "You're insane. Do you realize what you're doing? You could kill me," Yugyeom shouted as he continued to evade Jungkook's attacks. Jungkook chuckled, mocking the man now cowering in fear before him. "That's exactly my intention. To deal with someone crazy like you, I can be even crazier. If you ever come near Yin again, you'll meet your end at my hands." Jungkook attacked again, but Yugyeom managed to dodge with all his might. Yugyeom had never expected that the man he had quietly investigated would turn out to be like this, a man who always appeared composed and dignified. He had no idea Jungkook could become someone this terrifying. Other apartment residents began peeking from behind their doors, while the building's security team still hadn't shown up. Eventually, Yugyeom was cornered. Jungkook stood tall over him as he sat slumped against the wall, unable to move. Jungkook looked at Yugyeom with a sharp, mocking gaze and prepared to strike again, causing Yugyeom to let out a stifled scream. At that moment, Yugyeom realized that Jungkook was truly capable of going to extremes, more so than he had ever imagined. "Please forgive me, don't kill me. I won't go near Yin again, I promise," Yugyeom pleaded, his face pale with fear. Jungkook smirked at his words. "I don't trust you. You even pretended in front of Yin last time." Anger now clearly flashed across Jungkook's face. "No, I swear. This time I'm serious. If I go near her again, you can finish me off," Yugyeom stammered in desperation. Jungkook remained silent, glaring at him with hatred. Suddenly, he felt a pair of arms wrapping around him from behind. "Honey, please, let him go. I don't want you to get into trouble. I don't want you to be detained, even though he's in the wrong. If you hurt him, it'll turn into a bigger issue. You both could be taken in for further questioning, and it would take time. I don't want you to leave me, Jungkook, especially since we're getting married in 4 days." Hearing that, Yugyeom was shocked. Yin and Jungkook noticed his surprise. "Are you really getting married soon?" Yugyeom asked, frustrated. He now realized that he had truly lost any hope of winning Yin back. "Yes, we're getting married. And if you have any shame, you'd never show your face in front of me again. Your mistake was fatal, Yugyeom. You cheated on me and got that girl pregnant. Did you think I'd ever forgive you? The last time, I left the door open so you'd stop bothering me and understand my rejection. But instead, you did something insane to me. Now, don't expect my forgiveness. Get out of here." Without waiting for Yugyeom to leave, Yin quickly pulled Jungkook back into her apartment. Jungkook and Yin now sat on the sofa. Yin carefully took the knife from his hand and placed it on the table. His face still looked tense, though he was trying to calm down. "Honey," Yin called softly, trying to soothe his anger. "That guy, he's really like a psychopath obsessed with you," Jungkook said coldly. Hearing this, Yin tried to suppress her laughter. She thought to herself, "It seems my fiancé doesn't realize he's the one acting more like a psychopath right now." Both of them sat in silence for a moment. Yin checked her phone and remembered that it had buzzed earlier, signaling a message. It was from her mother in Bizen. "Yin, the hospital guarantee letter has been returned to us. Thank you for paying off your sister's medical bills." Yin raised an eyebrow, momentarily confused by her mother's message. Then she glanced at Jungkook. Of course. Who else could it have been? It was easy for him to find out everything about her. Finally, Yin hugged Jungkook tightly. "Thank you for covering my sister's medical expenses." Jungkook gave a small smile. "When are they coming here?" he asked Yin. "They're planning to arrive a day before our wedding. They'll come with my uncle, who will walk me down the aisle in place of my late father," Yin said, smiling. Jungkook nodded slightly and then held Yin's hand firmly. "Now pack your things. You're moving into my apartment tonight." Yin was surprised. "What's going on, Jungkook? Why all of a sudden?" Jungkook sighed. "It's not safe here. The security in this building is terrible. I'm not letting you stay here anymore." Yin understood. She too had doubts about the building's security. Finally, she nodded and began packing her clothes. "Starting tonight, She would be moving into Jungkook's apartment, which was clearly safer and more comfortable. The long-awaited day had finally arrived. Today, Yin and Jungkook were officially married as husband and wife. The wedding celebration went smoothly without any issues, and the newlyweds looked incredibly happy on their special day. Congratulations to Jungkook and Yin.